In the final days of the turbulent 1950s, the Nevada desert held a silence so heavy it felt carved from stone, and travelers whispered of a forbidden basin where the government erased footprints before dawn. Historians would later claim it was merely a testing site, but those who lived within the dust knew the truth was older, colder, and carved into the earth long before the first runway appeared in the shimmering heat. It was in this forgotten wilderness that the Central Intelligence Agency claimed a patch of barren soil and named it Groom Lake, though no map dared to mention the place that would soon be called Area 51. The Cold War cast its long shadow across the world, and with it came a fear that drove nations into silence, forcing scientists to bury their brightest inventions under layers of secrecy thicker than concrete. Witnesses spoke of nights when the sky cracked open with pale metallic light, gliding in perfect lines impossible for any aircraft known to mankind, leaving the air trembling as if time itself had shifted. Truck Humvees rolled through the desert without headlights, carrying crates sealed with wax and symbols no civilian had ever seen, guarded by men who never spoke and whose badges bore no familiar crest. Rumors spread of an object that fell from the heavens years earlier, its shell unburned by fire, its shape unlike any craft forged by human hands, and its fragments taken west under a moonless military escort. Locals claimed the agency feared not foreign enemies, but the strange metal recovered from that fallen machine, metal that bent without breaking and hummed when held close to living skin. As construction expanded and fences rose higher each season, the desert itself seemed to pull inward, swallowing roads, swallowing memories, until only silence remained between the mountains and the dried lake. The truth, whatever shape it once held, drifted like a mirage across the cracked earth, yet every whisper pointed to the same question. Why would the agency hide a simple aircraft program so fiercely? Some believed the answer lived beneath the sand, locked behind doors cut into ancient bedrock, where engineers studied something far older than the Cold War, something never meant for human understanding. And so Area 51 was born not from ambition but from fear, a fear that stirred in the hearts of those who saw too much, heard too much, and realized the desert was keeping a secret larger than any war. The winds still carry those whispers today, urging us to look deeper, to listen closer, and to wonder what waits beneath the quiet ground, and why the agency still guards it with the silence of a tomb. By the early years of the 1960s, Area 51 had shifted from a barren military outpost into a fortress of layered secrecy, where every sunrise erased the traces of whatever happened at night. Engineers brought in under sealed contracts spoke of devices that lit the air with a pale blue pulse, bending shadows in ways no earthly machine should, as if the desert itself recoiled from their touch. Some recalled a chamber carved deep beneath the runway, a room sealed with steel plates thicker than a grown man's arm, where fragments of the recovered craft were arranged like relics from an unknown world. Those fragments behaved strangely when exposed to heat or sound, vibrating with a faint harmonic pattern that scientists struggled to record, a pattern that seemed alive yet followed no natural rhythm. The agency insisted the research was vital to national defense, that foreign adversaries pursued similar studies, though no outsider ever proved such technology existed beyond myth and speculation. Flights launched under moonless skies carried test pilots who signed away their identities in exchange for access to machines that moved faster than logic allowed, faster than the very limits of physics. One pilot, known only by a single initial, described a craft that rose without engines, without flame, lifted by a force that pushed downward like compressed light, humming against the bones of anyone nearby. He claimed the controls responded not to movement but to intention, shifting with the slightest thought, a sensation that left him pale and trembling as though the machine understood him too clearly. But his testimony was buried under layers of classification, hidden behind redacted files that left only blank pages, as if the agency feared what the truth might reveal about human potential. Technicians whispered of visitors from Langley who studied not the craft but the pilots, examining their dreams, their fears, their behavior after each flight as though expecting a subtle alteration. Some believe the artifact housed within its core a field unknown to modern science, something that influenced the mind, bending memory and perception in soft spirals that left subjects disoriented. Others argued that the agency had already gone too far, tampering with forces beyond comprehension, chasing a power that might reshape the world in silence long before anyone realized it existed. Yet the desert held its secrets with unbroken loyalty, offering no answers to those who sought them, only the endless echo of wind across abandoned tire tracks and fading security lights. And as the project grew deeper and stranger, a single question began to haunt the few who still retained their skepticism. What exactly had fallen to Earth that the agency feared more than any rival? The truth remained locked behind reinforced doors and forgotten names, waiting for the rare moment when someone brave enough would dare to follow the trail into the shadows beneath Area 51. Rumors surrounding Area 51 reached a breaking point in the late 1960s, when a handful of scientists abruptly resigned from the project, leaving behind cryptic notes that raised more questions. They spoke of experiments that no longer centered on machines alone, but on the subtle interaction between recovered materials and human minds, a frontier of research so unnerving that even veterans trembled. One researcher described a translucent sphere, recovered from the crash, small enough to fit in two hands, yet emitting a low resonance that shifted tone whenever someone thought of a strong emotion nearby. He claimed the sphere responded differently to fear than to hope, as though it could detect intention itself, pulsing in faint flashes that followed patterns no mathematician could trace or decode. Those who studied it reported vivid dreams afterward, dreams shaped by strange landscapes and impossible skies, dreams that felt more like memories borrowed from somewhere beyond the limits of human origin. A technician confessed that after several nights, he began hearing soft whispers at the edge of sleep, whispers that grew clearer each time he approached the sphere, forming words in a language he could not know. When he attempted to record the phenomenon, the audio equipment failed, producing only a droning distortion that technicians compared to wind circling inside a hollow metal corridor deep underground. Within weeks, the witnesses who reported these events were reassigned or dismissed, their departure explained with vague references to stress and exhaustion, though their eyes told a different story entirely. Some vanished outright, their apartments emptied before friends noticed their absence, leaving behind only folded uniforms and quiet hallways that seemed untouched, as if time itself avoided lingering near them. The agency replaced them with new personnel, sworn under oaths thicker than any standard protocol, individuals chosen not for brilliance, but for their ability to obey without asking forbidden questions. Yet the whispers continued to spread along hidden channels. Tracing a pattern through the base that suggested something deeper was watching those who studied the artifact, observing them in perfect silence. A captain stationed near the lower levels reported a sensation of being followed whenever he passed the sealed chamber, despite seeing nothing but the cold metallic walls and dim emergency lights overhead. He described an invisible pressure in the air, a subtle weight pushing against the spine, as though a presence waited just beyond the limits of perception, assessing every heartbeat with clinical precision. Others recounted glimpses of movement, where no movement should exist, a faint shimmer across the corner of the eye, vanishing the instant they turned, leaving only the feeling of being deeply unwelcome. By the end of the decade, the number of unexplained resignations had risen to nearly a dozen, though official records listed no such totals, as if the base itself had swallowed the evidence whole and silent. And beneath all the denials, one truth lingered like smoke in the dark. Whatever the agency had uncovered inside Area 51 was changing not only their machines, but the minds of those who dared study it. Deep beneath the Nevada sands, past corridors disguised as storage wings, lay a chamber few officials had ever entered, a secret carved in silence and reinforced by unbroken chains of clearance older than 3 decades. Those who descended the narrow elevator spoke of a shift in the air, as if the lower levels existed outside ordinary atmosphere, holding a cold that clung to the skin like a warning whispered from an unseen presence. The room at the bottom was circular, with metal walls etched by symbols that no linguist could classify, patterns resembling constellations but arranged in ways that defied the familiar rhythm of the night sky above. In the center stood a single containment pillar, transparent yet dense, housing shards from the crash site, shards that pulsed faintly whenever someone approached, as though recognizing the heat of a living body. Scientists assigned to the chamber were told the object was inert, yet reports whispered otherwise. The shards seemed to shift position slowly from week to week, aligning into new angles impossible to predict. One physicist described the sensation of hearing thoughts that were not his own whenever he studied the fragments. Brief impressions of distant landscapes marked by storms of light and cities carved into mountains. Another researcher claimed the shards vibrated in sequences that matched no frequency known to Earth, producing a sound more like a memory than a tone, something felt in the bones long before reaching the ears. Security guards rotated every 10 days, though none lasted willingly. A few reported seeing silhouettes reflected on the pillar surface, shapes that moved independently even when the room was completely still. A lieutenant confessed that during one late patrol, he witnessed the dim lights flicker as the shards emitted a flash like a heartbeat, followed by a whisper in a distant dialect he could never fully recall again. The agency responded by tightening protocols, sealing logs, and forcing teams to rotate so quickly that no one developed certainty, only doubt and the quiet dread that settled deeper each time the doors reopened. Rumors traveled upward that the chamber was not just a research zone, but a vault for a message carried across impossible distances, waiting for someone capable of interpreting its meaning without losing their sanity. Some believed the shards were fragments of a vessel, others a beacon, or perhaps a recording left behind by something that watched humanity with an intelligence older than any century humans had ever counted. But the most disturbing theory came from a linguist who claimed that the symbols on the walls were not written by extraterrestrial visitors. They were added later by humans who deciphered part of the signal and hid it. He insisted the markings resembled ancient inscriptions found in deserts across multiple continents, suggesting that the phenomenon beneath Area 51 was tied to mysteries far older than modern intelligence. Before he could present his findings formally, he was reassigned to an unnamed post overseas, and every trace of his research vanished within hours, leaving colleagues unsettled by how quickly silence replaced him. Yet even sealed behind reinforced doors and classified chains of command, the chamber remained restless, its dim resonance reminding all who heard it that secrets of this scale were never meant to remain buried forever. For years, the agency preserved the chamber beneath Area 51 as a sealed anomaly, a relic too dangerous to explore yet too valuable for any rival power to discover, a secret resting on the edge of mythology. But secrecy carries weight, and weight always sinks. And as whispers of the shard resonance spread through classified corridors, pressure built within the ranks, urging leaders to confront what they long avoided. A committee of 7, chosen from divisions older than half a century, descended into the lower levels with the intent to end all speculation once and for all, demanding proof that the phenomenon was contained. They arrived to find the lights unstable, flickering with a rhythmic pattern that appeared almost timed, as though each pulse responded to their footsteps, acknowledging every movement with eerie precision. The containment pillar, once still and silent, now glowed with a steady silver haze, illuminating the strange symbols etched across the walls and casting shadows that did not match the positions of the observers. A linguist on the team whispered that the patterns had shifted since their last recording, forming arcs that resembled a celestial calendar counting down toward an intersection not found in human astronomy. One officer approached the pillar and placed his hand near its surface, expecting cold metal, yet feeling instead a faint tremor like a breath emerging from inside. A pulse synchronized with his own heartbeat. He recoiled, but the glow intensified, and the shards aligned in slow motion, sliding into a configuration none had previously documented, forming an angular structure that resembled a doorway or a portal. Panic rippled through the team, but before any order could be issued, a low vibration swept across the chamber, bending the air as though time itself had twisted, causing the walls to blur around their edges. The linguist insisted the symbols were activating a sequence, the same sequence referenced in ancient carvings from deserts spanning 3 continents, each pointing to an origin far from earthly history. A general attempted to abort the session, but the elevator controls on the surface shut down simultaneously, sealing the team inside and triggering internal lockdowns that occurred without human command. The shards then emitted a resonance unlike any recorded before, neither sound nor light, but something between memory and sensation, a wave that filled the mind with landscapes impossible to comprehend. One member later claimed he saw cities suspended in crimson clouds, and another witnessed an ocean reflecting 2 moons, while a third sensed voices speaking in a dialect that felt both ancient and familiar. As quickly as the visions came, they vanished, leaving the chamber in a dim quiet that felt heavier than any noise. The doorway shape dissolved back into scattered fragments as if aware they were being observed. The systems reactivated on their own, releasing the locks, allowing the committee to flee upward in silence, each too shaken to explain what they witnessed, afraid their words might make the visions real again. Within days, the official review concluded that the lower chamber held no active threat, and all anomalous readings were labeled natural gas interference, a verdict written without a single protest from the team. But those present knew better, and each carried an unspoken fear that the resonance had not shown them possibilities but memories, glimpses of something returning, or perhaps remembering where it once belonged. The chamber was sealed again, deeper than before, with protocols that required clearances held by fewer than a dozen people alive, ensuring that the public would never learn what nearly woke beneath the desert. Yet even now, late at night, sensors buried far underground register brief pulses, faint but patterned, echoing at intervals too precise to dismiss, as though the shards are waiting for another witness. Somewhere in the darkness below Area 51, the resonance still breathes, and those who once felt its presence know one truth remains unchanged. Secrets do not sleep. They wait, and they remember.